Well, America has been focused on the alleged kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. We still have to say alleged until they arrest a kidnapper. To bring us up on the latest is our good friend, NewsNation's Elizabeth Prann, a journalist, a wife, a mom, a good darn friend of ours, and host of the Raising America podcast. Thanks you,
You
Elizabeth.
know, Ken, if I were a pilot, I would hold that airplane for you. I want to start that conversation with this. But I want to ask you a personal. First of all, I want to tread lightly on this. I never, ever want to be critical of law enforcement or the work that investigators are doing behind the scenes. But I will say that I go down a rabbit hole while watching the Olympics, eating popcorn, and I become a private investigator late at night, and I am drowning in conspiracy theories, right? Because we have a glove that just surfaced. We're looking at the video camera footage that's from the Nest surveillance. And I think as a consumer and as a mother, as someone who talks to folks in law enforcement, we can catch a murderous dictator in the middle of the night in Venezuela, and he can come back unharmed with an uncrimped jumpsuit. And so you do have room for critics who say we are approaching 2 weeks with an 84-year-old woman who was apprehended from her home. Now, I will say a lot of folks are saying, wait a second, this is Tucson, Arizona. It's not rural. So we have surveillance cameras and we have CCTV around the city. A lot of that equipment is not necessarily equipped for facial recognition, but we're all looking at this footage, right? And then there was a suspect who was, like you said, it was initially apprehended and released, a DoorDash driver. So I think going forward, you do have folks who are going to start to be critical of the Pima County Sheriff's Department that say we just simply need more information. But they did say after they released that footage, they have upwards of almost 20,000 new tips. But that being said, Ken, you have to weed through a lot of these conspiracy theories and tips that aren't going to bring you information. And as I mentioned, this was February 1st. We are approaching 2 weeks.
Yeah. All you have to do is go on X, or as I like to call it, the X. Just go on the X, and you'll see so many people who've shown pictures. I know I don't even I don't even want to mention because right away it
Agree.
suggests guilt. But there is a picture of somebody, let's just say, who is connected to the family, and they're showing a picture of that person side by side with the masked individual, and trying to say, look, it's the same eyes. Look, in my Italian family, I could show you 20 people with the same eyes. That doesn't mean that they, masked up and committed a murder. So we have to be very careful when we play armchair detective, right? And let these people do their jobs. But you're right. It makes you scratch your head and say, why wasn't the Ring doorbell video the first thing they looked at on day one? Why isn't somebody like Savannah Guthrie's mother, who's, she may not be a millionaire herself, but she's certainly not destitute in $1 million home in that neighborhood. Why did she not have a subscription to her cloud for that video? And why did they have to go through the hoops that they had to for? It's all these things. Maybe that's God's little way of telling us all, if you have your Ring camera, make sure your subscription to the cloud is good, so that you're recording that video in case somebody creepy comes to your door.
Well, and you had investigators say, as you mentioned, what a blessing they had access to that. For folks who don't know, she didn't have an active subscription. They had to go through the company Nest to get some of that footage, right? And so I think we're getting people who look at maybe the ransom note. So why did we get the ransom note, and why didn't we get the surveillance, or at least news of a ransom note? And why did we get the surveillance footage a little bit later? That was to clarify some of those details. They had to jump through some hoops to get that. Now, as far as the family speaking out, we do see Savannah coming out in these videos, and it is gut-wrenching. We're talking about essentially a defenseless woman when we talk about, remember, you and I have talked sandwich generation, so we feel like our youngest are very vulnerable and our oldest are very vulnerable. She had no defense. But people will also be critical as why did the media have access to the crime scene where we got some of the footage, the camera work of the blood that spattered on the floor, right? And then we're not getting a lot of information, the drip, drip, drip of the glove and the Nest. And I think that you have to think of what investigators are trying to work through here. And you mentioned the eyes and the photos that are coming out. You and I both know that it's very hard to distinguish what we see online, what is real and what is artificial intelligence. We could see videos all day long that are completely manufactured. And so they're dealing with that as well.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. That is the case. But, what gets me about the gloves is in this era of drones, you got to put up a drone and scour all that land without having to do the side-by-side search. As well as I do, that when police are searching an area, what they do is they line up 5 or 10 people in a row and you walk a straight line. That way you don't miss anything in that 50-foot span, and you could do whole fields looking for anything that may have fallen on the ground. And why wasn't that done immediately, or why didn't they just use a drone to do that on day one? And that could have really sped everything up. See, the fact that we have the glove now, we might get DNA. Great, but now we might find out that the person is in Mexico already with Nancy Guthrie, and good luck trying to get her back.
Yeah, I mean, it's gut wrenching when you think of that. And you also think of the fact that she needed medication, that her pacemaker is not connecting with her phone. That really gives you a grim outlook. And you and I can look at the statistics and we could weed through them, chances of survival. And I think that's where we go really dark when we're talking about a defenseless woman. So we'll see if new information comes out today. I mean, there are reporters that are posted up over Tucson, Arizona, and we will get information. And hopefully we hear from the sheriff's office today where we can get some new details and any results from the glove that we found.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we got about a minute and a half left. Tell us what is on the latest Raising America podcast. BHA, BHA.
So I love this one. I actually just got back from Washington, D.C., because a lot of people are saying, what are Maha moms doing behind the scenes? So I followed one all day yesterday. We walked the street, the hills of the Capitol. We went down to HHS. We are talking BHA, which is a chemical compound that's found in most of the foods that we eat. But when I followed Zen Honeycutt, she's the founder of Moms Across America, she essentially said she did not only an investigative study into school meals, but also our military meals. And it turns out that they are littered with toxic chemicals, with aviarin contraceptives, with glyphosate. And we're feeding our military. This is 1.5 billion meals a year, not including MREs. So what she's essentially saying, if we want our bravest to be defending our freedoms, why aren't we feeding them better food? So she's lobbying members of Congress. We'll have all the behind scenes footage for you. It's coming up on our webpage today. So check it out, Ken.
There we go. And by the way, the whole BHA thing too was interesting because I know it's certified safe what do they call it? Almost safe or whatever by the government, because it's meant to be eaten in tiny doses in one food. And it's an ice cream, as you point out in your podcast. Yes, I look at your podcast. It's in ice cream and things like that. But the thing is that when they make it, they say it's okay in tiny doses. That's for the one food. When you eat 20 things a day and each contains a little bit of BHA, by the end of the day, you've eaten a pound of it. That's when it may not be a healthy thing for you. And that's why it's been banned in Europe.
It's been banned in Europe. It's in cereals. It's in frozen pizzas. It's in ice cream. It's a preservative, essentially. And they're all alternatives. That's what the critics will say. There are alternatives that we could eat that could be put in food. It was developed in the 60s, and it's been in our food system. But as you mentioned, it's been in more foods decade after decade. It's something that, you're right, we're not just eating a little bit of if we're grabbing those processed items, which we all are, even if we're healthy.
100%. Elizabeth, the good news is, though, I'm growing an 11th finger right now. So that was a good thing.
That is great dexterity.
I try. Journalist, wife, mom, good friend, and host of Raising America podcast. Look, I cannot stop the sun from creeping through the window. It's a good thing. Our dear friend, NewsNation. Yeah. And I'll close it with that. NewsNation's Elizabeth Prann. By the way, I should mention The Hill is part of the same organization. So I read The Hill all the time, too. Thank you for coming on this morning. We always appreciate you, Elizabeth.